My new neighbor knocked on my back door at 10:47 on a Tuesday night. She was wearing a faded blue bathrobe, her white hair pinned up unevenly, her face tight with the kind of fear people try to hide when they do not want to scare you. Before I could ask what was wrong, she grabbed my wrist and whispered, "Tonight at exactly midnight, bring your daughter to my back porch. No lights, no phone flashlight, no noise." I stared at her. "My daughter is asleep," I said. "What are you talking about?" Her eyes moved past me down the hallway toward my little girl's bedroom. Then she said the words that split my life in half. "If you leave her in that room tonight, you may never forgive yourself." I almost slammed the door in her face. I almost called my father. I almost called the man I had been letting into my kitchen, my daughter's life, and my mother's house for the past 6 weeks. But something in that woman's eyes stopped me. And 2 hours later, when I stood in her upstairs bedroom holding my sleeping daughter against my chest and looked back across the yard at my own house, I saw a man standing beneath my daughter's window. He was not trying to break in. He was not trying to run. He was holding a key, the spare key only my father was supposed to have. And when the wind lifted his hood for 1 second, I recognized his face. It was not the man I feared. It was the man I had been taught to hate. Before we go deeper, thank you for being here. If you are listening from a small town, a big city, or somewhere far away, drop your location in the comments. I always wonder who is on the other side of the screen. This story contains fictional elements created for entertainment and reflection, but the lesson inside it is real. Because sometimes the person who destroys your peace does not come through a broken window. Sometimes he walks through the front door. Sometimes he drinks coffee at your table. Sometimes he calls himself family. And sometimes he has your house key because the person who gave it to him shares your blood. My name is Nora Bennett. I was 32 years old when everything happened. I lived in a small blue house in Maple Ridge, Ohio, with my 6-year-old daughter, Ellie. It was not a mansion. It was not the kind of house people fight over on television. It had white porch railing, a cracked driveway, a kitchen window that stuck every winter, and a narrow hallway where every floorboard had its own complaint. But it was mine. More than that, it was my mother's last gift to me. My mother, Diane, had run a small alterations business out of the detached garage behind the house. For 27 years, women came to her with prom dresses, bridesmaid gowns, church suits, broken zippers, and pants that needed hemming before Monday. She worked under fluorescent lights with pins in her mouth and a tape measure around her neck. She was not rich. She was not powerful. But she knew how to make people feel seen. When she died 3 years before this story began, she left me the house, 2 old sewing machines, a cedar chest full of fabric, and a savings account that was not big enough to change a life, but was enough to keep one from falling apart. To other people, it was just property. To me, it was proof that my mother had loved me practically. She could not stop life from hurting me, so she gave me walls, a roof, a place where my daughter could sleep. That was the legacy I was trying to protect even before I understood someone else was trying to take it. I worked as a scheduling coordinator at a pediatric dental office. That sounds calmer than it was. I spent my days answering phones, moving appointments, apologizing for delays I did not cause, and trying to keep smiling while parents snapped at me because their child's cleaning ran 20 minutes late. By 5 o'clock, my voice was sweet and my shoulders were stone. Every morning began the same. My alarm went off at 5:15. I turned it off before it could wake Ellie. I walked barefoot down the hall, avoiding the squeaky board outside her room. I made oatmeal with brown sugar because Ellie said plain oatmeal tasted like wet paper. I packed her lunch peanut butter crackers, apple slices, a cheese stick, and one tiny chocolate kiss tucked under the napkin because my mother used to do that for me. Then I stood in Ellie's doorway and watched her sleep for a few seconds longer than necessary. She always slept curled around a stuffed rabbit named Professor Buttons, one ear missing, one glass eye scratched. She loved that rabbit like he had saved her life in a war. "Baby," I would whisper, "time to wake up." And every morning she opened one eye and said 5 more minutes. That was our life. Small, tired, predictable, mine. Ellie's father, Miles, had been gone for almost 2 years. When people asked, I gave the simple version. He left for work. That was technically true. He had taken a long-term construction management job out west, first in Oregon, Then Washington, helping repair roads and bridges after storms and wildfires. The money was supposed to help us. That was what he said when he left. 2 years of sacrifice, Nora. Then we breathe. But 2 years is a long time. When you are the one packing lunches, paying bills, killing spiders, fixing toilets, going to parent-teacher meetings alone, and explaining to your child why daddy's video calls kept getting shorter. By the time the divorce papers came, I had already gotten used to the empty side of the bed. My father, Grant Ellis, helped me file everything. At least I thought he was helping. Dad had always been a man people listened to. He was broad-shouldered, loud, and certain. The kind of man who called waitresses sweetheart-slapped men on the back too hard and believed volume was the same thing as wisdom. He had owned a small appliance repair shop when I was young, but online reviews, big box stores, and his own stubbornness slowly killed it. After Mom died, he became more involved in my life. He brought groceries. He fixed the porch step. He took Ellie for ice cream. He told me Miles had changed. "He's not coming back the way you think he is," Dad said one night, standing in my kitchen with a beer in his hand. "Men don't stay away that long unless they have a reason." I hated hearing it, but I was lonely enough to believe it. That is the dangerous thing about loneliness. It does not always make you desperate. Sometimes it just makes you easier to steer. Dad had a spare key to my house. I gave it to him after Mom passed because he said, "What if something happens to you and Ellie needs me?" At the time that sounded loving. Later I would understand it was access. The man my father introduced to me was named Darren Cole. At least that was the name he gave me. He showed up on a Saturday afternoon in late September, wearing dark jeans, a gray sweater, and a smile that looked carefully practiced without seeming fake. My father brought him over like he was presenting evidence that the world still had decent men in it. "Nora, this is Darren," Dad said. "He does home insurance assessments." "Good job." Good head on his shoulders. Helped me sort out a mess with the shop paperwork last year. Darren shook my hand with both of his. Not too tight, not too soft, just warm enough to feel safe. "It's nice to finally meet you," he said. "Grant talks about you and Ellie all the time." That should have made me uncomfortable. Instead, it made me feel seen. That is embarrassing to admit now, but it is true. When you spend years feeling like everyone has moved on without checking whether you are still standing, a sentence like that can feel like someone opening a window in a closed room. Darren did everything right. He noticed the loose cabinet hinge and fixed it without making a show of it. He carried a heavy bag of dog food from my trunk, even though I did not own a dog. I had bought it for the animal shelter donation drive at Ellie's school. He asked Ellie whether Professor Buttons was a professor of science or literature. He did not talk to her in that fake, sugary voice adults use when they think children are pets. He crouched to her level and listened like her answer mattered. "Science," Ellie said. Darren nodded seriously. "Then I hope he has strong opinions about dinosaurs." Ellie almost smiled. For Ellie, almost smiling at a stranger was basically a parade. Dad watched from the recliner with a satisfied look on his face. "You see," he said later while Darren and Ellie were in the backyard looking for acorns. "That's the kind of man a little girl needs around. Someone steady." I looked through the kitchen window. Darren was holding Ellie's bucket while she filled it with acorns, each one chosen with great seriousness. My daughter looked happy, and I was tired. That combination can make a woman ignore the small voice inside her. 2 days later, I saw the photo on Facebook. My father had posted it without asking me. It was Darren pushing Ellie on the swing in my backyard. Ellie's hair was flying behind her. Darren was smiling like a man auditioning for a family portrait. The caption said, "Some men step up when others walk away." Under it, my Aunt Marlene commented, "Finally, Ellie has a real father figure." My cousin Denise wrote, "Nora deserves a good man after everything." A woman from Dad's church wrote, "Grant always knows what's best for his girls." I stared at the screen until my coffee went cold. No one had asked me how I felt. No one had asked Ellie. No one had asked why my father felt comfortable replacing my daughter's father on social media like he was changing a broken light bulb. I wanted to call Dad and tell him to take it down. Instead, I put the phone face down on the table. I told myself he meant well. I was very good at making excuses for people who made me feel small. The first strange thing happened the third time Darren came over. Ellie was already in bed. Dad had left. Darren stayed to help clean up after dinner, even though I told him he did not have to. It's just dishes, he said. You do enough. Nobody had said that to me in a very long time. He made tea. Chamomile with honey. Nothing dramatic. Nothing suspicious. He handed me a mug and sat across from me at the kitchen table. We talked about ordinary things. Work. School. The weird neighbor 2 houses down who mowed his lawn at 7 a.m. on Sundays. The way Ohio weather could change its mind 3 times before lunch. Then he asked about my mother. Not in a pushy way. In a soft way. What was she like, he asked, glancing toward the garage. Your dad said she sewed for people. I told him more than I should have. I told him about the prom dresses, the church ladies, the cedar chest, the way Mom kept cash folded inside old pattern envelopes because she did not trust banks when she was upset. He listened with his chin resting on one hand. Like every detail mattered. The next morning, Ellie spilled her cereal all over the table. That was not unusual. What was unusual was her face. She did not laugh. She did not say oops. She froze, both hands flat on the table, her eyes fixed on the hallway. Ellie, I said. She blinked too fast. Did I do bad? The question hit me strangely. No, baby, it's cereal. We clean it up. She stared toward her bedroom. Is Mr. Darren gone? Yes, I said slowly. He went home last night. Her shoulders loosened, but only a little. I crouched beside her chair. Did something happen? She pressed her lips together. Then she whispered, he came in my room. My body went cold. When? At night. What did he do? She looked at the hallway again. He said Professor Buttons was on the floor, but he was looking in my treasure drawer. Her treasure drawer was the bottom drawer of her little white dresser. It held stickers, broken crayons, birthday cards, a rock shaped like a heart, and sometimes the brass key to my mother's cedar chest, because Ellie liked to pretend she was a museum guard. Before I could ask another question, there were footsteps on the porch. Darren had forgotten his jacket, he said. He stood at the door, smiling, holding 2 coffees from the bakery on the corner. I looked at him differently that morning. Not enough, but differently. Ellie said you came into her room last night, I said. For half a second, nothing changed. Then his face arranged itself into concern. Oh, he said gently. I am sorry. I should have mentioned that. I got up to use the bathroom and saw her door open. Her rabbit was on the floor. I put it back. He looked past me at Ellie. Did I scare you, kiddo? Ellie looked down at her cereal. He sighed like a man disappointed in himself. I'm sorry, Nora. I crossed a line. I guess I'm used to helping with my nephews. I should have asked. It sounded reasonable. That was the problem. Danger does not always sound like danger. Sometimes it sounds like accountability. Sometimes it apologizes before you can accuse it. I accepted the coffee, and I hate that I did. Over the next few weeks, Darren became part of the house in small ways. That was how he did it, not all at once. A light bulb here, a bag of groceries there, a text that said, "Did you eat today?" Another that said, "Ellie mentioned purple markers. I saw some at Target." Then he started making comments. Little ones, almost helpful. You should really keep your important papers in one place. Your dad said you get overwhelmed with finances. I can help you organize things. A house like this could be refinanced someday. You and Ellie deserve better. Every time I stiffened, he softened his voice. I'm not pushing, I just care. One Saturday afternoon, I found him standing in my mother's garage. The door was open. Sunlight fell across the old sewing machines. Dust floated in the air. Darren had one hand on the edge of Mom's cutting table. This could be useful space, he said. I stood in the doorway. It is useful. He looked around at the fabric bins, the thread racks, the boxes labeled in my mother's handwriting. No offense, Nora, but this is a room full of ghosts. I felt my face go still. These were my mother's things. I know. He smiled like I was being sentimental in a childish way. But dead people don't need rooms. Living people do. I did not answer. He stepped closer. You keep saying you want a fresh start. Maybe part of that is clearing out what keeps you stuck. My father, who had been standing behind him, nodded. Your mother wouldn't want you trapped in here. I looked at him. How do you know what Mom would want? His expression tightened. I was married to her for 34 years. And I was her daughter. For a moment, silence filled the garage. Then Dad laughed like I had said something cute. You always did get emotional about junk. Junk. My mother's machines. My mother's fabric. My mother's handwriting. My mother's life. Darren put a hand on my shoulder. I stepped away. His eyes changed for half a second. Then he smiled again. That night, Ellie woke up crying. I found her sitting in bed with Professor Buttons pressed under her chin. Her room smelled like baby shampoo and fear. I sat beside her. What happened? She shook her head. Bad dream. Another shake. Baby, you can tell me anything. She looked at me with wet eyes. If I tell the truth, will you disappear like Grandma? The room tilted. What? Her little mouth trembled. Mr. Darren said grown-up secrets keep mommies safe. He said if I tell wrong, you might get sick and go away like Grandma. Something inside me went very quiet. Not calm. Quiet. The way a house goes quiet right before a storm knocks out the power. I pulled her into my arms. You listen to me, I whispered. Nothing you say can make me disappear. Nothing you tell me can hurt me more than you being scared alone. She cried into my shirt. I held her until my arms went numb. The next morning, I called my father. I told him what Ellie said. He sighed before I finished. Nora, kids misunderstand things. She said Darren told her secrets keep me safe. And maybe he was playing. Maybe she twisted it. She's 6. The word landed like a slap. She's 6, I repeated. Exactly. Dad's voice hardened. You need to stop looking for problems. Darren is trying. You're going to scare off the first decent man who's been willing to deal with your baggage. My daughter is not baggage. I didn't say she was. You meant me. Silence. Then he said, you have no idea how hard you are to help. That was my father's gift. He could wound you and make you feel ungrateful for bleeding. The woman next door moved in 2 weeks after Darren appeared. Her name was Hazel Whitcomb. She was 68, maybe 70, with short white hair, wireframe glasses, and a way of standing still that made you feel like she had already noticed 3 things you were trying to hide. The house next door had been empty for months after the old owner moved to a nursing home. I had gotten used to the dark windows and tall weeds. When Hazel's moving van arrived, I baked banana bread. My mother always said you welcomed a neighbor with something warm. Hazel opened the door before I finished knocking. Nora Bennett, she said. I blinked. Yes. She glanced at the bread, then at my face. Your mailbox says Bennett. Oh, right. She smiled faintly. I'm Hazel. Inside her house already looked more settled than mine did after years. Books on shelves, a radio on the kitchen counter, a framed photo of a younger Hazel standing beside a yellow school bus, one hand on her hip, smiling like she had just handled 20 screaming children and lived to tell it. I drove school buses for 34 years, she said when she saw me looking. You learn a lot watching children in a rearview mirror. That sentence stayed with me. At the time, I did not know why. Hazel asked practical questions. When did trash get picked up? Did the street flood? Was the man with the barking beagle friendly or just nosy? I answered. Then because she listened like my mother used to, I told her a little too much. About Ellie, about Miles being gone, about my father helping, about Darren. When I said Darren's name, something changed. Not big enough for most people to notice, but Hazel's hand paused on her teacup. Darren, she said. Yes. Last name, Cole. She nodded once, too slowly. That evening, Darren came over with pizza. He brought Ellie a little plastic craft kit from the dollar store and my father a 6-pack. Hazel was outside watering a plant that did not need water. Darren lifted his hand in a friendly wave. Hazel did not wave back. She watched him. Not like a curious neighbor, like a woman watching a dog near a playground. Later that night after Darren left, I stood at Ellie's bedroom door. She was asleep. Professor Buttons tucked under her arm. The nightlight painted the wall soft yellow. I told myself everything was fine. But then Ellie murmured in her sleep. No secret game. My heart stopped. I stepped into the room. Ellie. She turned over, still asleep, and clutched the rabbit tighter. No, don't tell Mommy. I sat on the edge of her bed until morning. Darren came over more often after that. My father encouraged it. Actually, encouraged is too gentle. He pushed. At Sunday dinner, he poured Darren coffee before he poured mine. When Ellie showed him a drawing from school, Dad said, show Darren. He knows how to appreciate things. When Miles's name came up because Ellie asked whether Daddy still liked pancakes, Dad said, some men like pancakes more than responsibility. Darren lowered his eyes like he was too respectful to comment. But he did not correct him. Then Dad posted another Facebook picture. This one showed Darren sitting beside Ellie at the kitchen table helping her glue glitter onto a paper crown. The caption said, family is who shows up. Aunt Marlene commented, beautiful. Blood doesn't make a father, presence does. I wanted to scream, not because the sentence was completely wrong, because it was being used as a weapon by people who had no idea what was happening inside my house. The night Hazel came to my door, Darren had supposedly driven to Cincinnati for a work appointment. He kissed my cheek in the kitchen and said, "Lock up, okay? People are strange." My father left 20 minutes later. Ellie was asleep by 8:30. At 10:47, Hazel knocked. At midnight, I carried Ellie across the backyard. She was heavy in my arms, warm and limp with sleep, Professor Buttons crushed between us. Hazel opened her back door before I touched it. No greeting, no questions. She led me upstairs in the dark. Her guest room faced my house. The curtains were pulled except for a narrow gap. "Stand here," she whispered. I shifted Ellie on my hip. "What am I looking for?" "Your own house," Hazel said, "and the truth." For several minutes, nothing happened. The backyard looked exactly as it always did. The maple tree, the garage, the porch steps, the faint yellow square of Ellie's bedroom window. Then a shadow moved along the side fence. A man stepped into the yard. He wore a dark hoodie. He walked calmly. Not like a burglar, not like someone afraid, like a person following a routine. He went to the back door first. He touched the lock. Then he bent down and pressed something against the lower frame. "What is he doing?" I whispered. Hazel did not answer. The man moved to the kitchen window, then to the garage, then back toward Ellie's side of the house. He stopped beneath her window and looked up. Not for a second, not by accident. He stood there for almost 5 minutes. My daughter slept against my shoulder, unaware that a man was staring at the room where she should have been. I felt something tear open inside me. "He has been coming for 9 nights, Hazel said. I turned my head. "What?" "Usually between 1:40 and 2:30. Same path, same stops. Tonight he came earlier." "Why didn't you tell me?" Her face did not soften. "Because if I had knocked on your door and said a man was circling your house at night, you would have called your father, or Darren, or both." I could not deny it. The man moved again. A gust of wind shook the maple leaves. The hood lifted. For 1 second, the porch light caught his face. I nearly dropped my daughter. It was Miles, my ex-husband, Ellie's father. The man I thought had abandoned us. The man my father told me had moved on. He stood beneath our daughter's window with a face I barely recognized. Thinner, older, haunted. And when he lifted his hand to the window frame, I realized he was not trying to get inside. He was sliding a small wooden wedge into the outer track. He was making sure the window could not open from the outside. "He's protecting her," Hazel whispered. I could not speak. I could only watch my ex-husband move around my little blue house in the dark, checking every door, every window, every place someone could enter. Then he disappeared through the side yard, and my whole life split into 2 parts. Before I saw him, and after. I called Miles at 2:53 a.m. He answered on the second ring. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he said, "Nora." His voice broke something in me, not because it was romantic, because it was familiar. Because it still sounded like the man who used to warm Ellie's bottles at 3 in the morning while I cried from exhaustion. "Why are you outside my house?" I asked. He exhaled. "Where is Ellie?" "With me." "Where?" I looked at Hazel. "At the neighbors." "Good," he said. "Stay there." "No, you don't get to give me orders. You don't get to stand outside my house for weeks and then tell me." "Nora," he said, low and urgent. "Darren is not who he says he is." The room went quiet. Even Hazel seemed to stop breathing. "What do you know?" "Enough to know he should not be near Ellie." My knees weakened. Hazel took Ellie from my arms before I realized I was losing my grip. Miles continued. "His real name is Blake Redding. He's used other names. Darren Cole is just the one he brought to Ohio." I pressed my hand over my mouth. "How do you know?" "Because I came home 7 weeks ago." 7 weeks. Miles had been home 7 weeks. "I went by the school first," he said. "I thought if I showed up at the house, you'd slam the door in my face. I deserve that, but I wanted to see Ellie, just see her." His voice caught. "She ran to me, Nora. She still ran to me." I closed my eyes. She had a bruise on her wrist. Small, like someone grabbed her too hard. I asked her what happened, and she said Mr. Darren played a treasure game. My stomach turned. She said he asked her to find Grandma Diane's special key. She said if she did good, you would stop being sad. If she told you would go away like Grandma. I gripped the windowsill. "Stop." I wish I could. Hazel lowered Ellie gently onto the bed. My daughter stirred but did not wake. Miles said I looked into him. A guy I worked with in Oregon had a sister who got taken in by a man just like him. Same face, different name. She lost her house. Her kids stopped talking for months. I sent him a picture. He recognized him. This was not a courtroom speech, not a perfect investigation, not a movie. It was a father seeing the wrong man too close to his child and refusing to look away. "Why didn't you tell me?" I whispered. "Because Grant told me you hated me." The name hit like a slap. My father. Miles was silent for a second. "He told me you didn't want me near Ellie. He told me you had already found someone. He told me if I loved you, I would sign the papers and stop making your life harder." I thought of my father standing in my kitchen telling me Miles had chosen work over us. Two people separated by one man's lies. "How could you believe him?" I asked. Miles answered quietly. "Because he was your father." I had no answer for that. At 6 in the morning, Hazel made coffee so strong it tasted like punishment. Ellie slept upstairs in Hazel's guest bed. I sat at the kitchen table across from Miles for the first time in almost 2 years. He looked exhausted. His jacket smelled like cold air and sawdust. His hands were rougher than I remembered. Hazel sat at the end of the table like a judge no one had appointed but everyone accepted. Miles explained everything. After he saw Ellie at school, he started watching from a distance. He saw Darren come and go. He saw my father let Darren into the house when I was at work. He saw Darren leave once through the back door at 12:12 a.m. on a night he had supposedly driven to Dayton. "I thought maybe I misunderstood," Miles said. "Then I saw him use a key. My father's key." The room seemed to tilt. Miles reached into his jacket and pulled out a small plastic bag. Inside was a tiny black square. "I found this under your porch bench 2 weeks ago," he said. "What is it?" "A recorder. Cheap kind, motion activated. Someone wanted to know when people came and went." Hazel's mouth tightened. Miles looked at me. I didn't know if there were more inside. I didn't want to enter without permission. So I kept checking the outside. I put wedges on Ellie's window. I jammed the garage side door when Darren wasn't there. I changed nothing permanently because I was afraid he'd notice. "You should have told me," I said. "I know." "No," I said, my voice rising. "You don't get to become a hero because you finally did at midnight what you should have done in daylight." He lowered his eyes. "I know. That was what stopped me. Not an excuse. Not defensiveness. Just those 2 words. I know." He did not ask me to forgive him. He did not ask me to understand. He did not make his shame my responsibility. And that strangely made it easier to keep listening. Hazel tapped the table once. "Feelings later, child first." She was right. That morning I called in sick. I took Ellie to school myself and watched her walk through the doors. Then I drove to my father's house. Dad lived 15 minutes away in a brick ranch with a flag out front and a garage full of tools he no longer used. He opened the door wearing sweatpants and an Ohio State sweatshirt. "Nora, what are you doing here this early?" I looked at his face, my father's face. The face that had been there at birthdays, graduations, hospital rooms. The face I had trusted because it belonged to family. "Where's your spare key to my house?" I asked. His expression did not change enough. That was how I knew. "What? My key? In the drawer probably. Why?" "Show me." He laughed. "Too loud. Don't start acting crazy because some man disappointed you again." Some man. Not Darren. Not Miles. Some man. I stepped past him. He grabbed my arm. Not hard, but enough. And for the first time in my life, I pulled away from my father like he was a stranger. "Do not touch me," I said. He stared at me. Something shifted in his face then. The loving father disappeared. Underneath was irritation, entitlement. A man angry that the daughter he had managed for 32 years was no longer moving where he pushed. I walked to his office. He followed, cursing under his breath. The left desk drawer was locked. "Open it," I said. "Number." That one word told me everything. "Dad." His jaw tightened. "You do not come into my house and order me around. But you came into mine and gave my key away." His eyes flashed. I did what I had to do. The truth came out too early. He knew it. I knew it. For a second, neither of us moved. Then he leaned closer and said something I will never forget. "Your mother left you that house, but I kept this family standing. I had a right to decide what happened to it." The room went silent. Not because there was nothing to say, because there was too much. "You had a right," I asked. "You were drowning," he snapped. Bills late. Crying every time I came over. A child asking for a father who wasn't there. You think Diane wanted you living like that? You think she wanted her house wasted on your feelings? My mother's name in his mouth felt like a hand around my throat. You used her, I said. I protected what she left. No, you tried to trade it. His face changed, only for a second. But I saw it. Fear. Then anger covered it. You don't know anything. I know enough. I left his house without the key. Not because I was scared. Because I finally understood I did not need his permission to believe my own eyes. That afternoon, Hazel called a man named Officer Kemp, who had gone to church with her late husband. He came over after his shift. Plain clothes, tired eyes, no dramatic promises. He listened at Hazel's kitchen table while Ellie colored in the next room. He watched Miles's footage. He looked at the recorder. He asked me what Ellie had said. When I told him about the secret game, his jaw tightened. I'm going to be honest, he said. This kind of thing can be hard to move fast on unless we catch him entering or get a clear statement from the child with a specialist present. But you are not overreacting. Those words nearly made me cry. You are not overreacting. Every woman who has ever been trained to doubt herself knows how powerful that sentence is. He told me to take Ellie to a child counselor connected with the school district. Not because I needed to build a case, because Ellie needed help. That was the first time someone said her healing mattered more than the proof. The counselor's name was Miss Angela. She had a room full of stuffed animals, soft lamps, and a basket of smooth stones children could hold when talking felt too hard. Ellie went in holding Professor Buttons. I waited outside and stared at a poster about feelings until the words blurred. After 40 minutes, Miss Angela came out. Her voice was gentle, but her eyes were serious. Ellie believes she caused something bad, she said. My throat closed. She says Mr. Darren told her grown-up secrets were how children helped their mommies. He asked her to find Grandma's brass key and bring it to the hallway table. He told her if she told you, you would get sick and go away like Grandma. I gripped the chair. He used my mother's death, Miss Angela nodded. He used what she already feared. That sentence hollowed me out. Darren had not just charmed me. He had studied us. He had taken the softest, most sacred things in our house and turned them into handles. My grief, my daughter's fear, my father's greed, my mother's legacy. All of it. That night I did not go home. Ellie and I slept at Hazel's. For the first time in weeks, Ellie slept through the night. I did not. I sat in Hazel's kitchen with a cup of tea going cold in my hands. Miles sat across from me. Hazel had gone upstairs, though I had a feeling she could hear everything. Tell me the truth, I said. Why did you really stay gone? Miles looked at the table. I thought I was doing something noble. I almost laughed. He deserved that. I kept thinking if I could just send enough money, if I could just build something better, then the distance would make sense. Then Grant started telling me you were happier without me. He said every call set you back. He said Ellie stopped asking for me. She asked every week, I said. His face crumpled, only for a second, but I saw it. He told me she was calling Darren almost Daddy, Miles whispered. I closed my eyes. My father had not only sold access to my house, he had rewritten my family while we were still alive inside it. I was proud, Miles said, and ashamed. I thought if you had moved on, I had no right to barge back in and make myself the injured man. So I signed what he sent. What he sent? The divorce paperwork. Grant mailed it to me with a note. What note? Miles pulled out his phone. He had kept a photo. My father's handwriting filled the screen. Let my daughter have peace. Do not punish her because you failed as a husband. I read it twice. Then I handed the phone back. There are moments in life when grief becomes clean. Not easier. Clean. Like a window after someone wipes away grease. I finally saw my father. Not as complicated. Not as old-fashioned. Not as doing his best. As a man who chose himself every time it mattered. The next day was Sunday. Dad always came over Sunday afternoon. He expected coffee. He expected Ellie to run to him. He expected me to have forgiven whatever mood I had been in the day before. But this Sunday he did not come alone. He brought Aunt Marlene. He brought my cousin Denise. He even brought Darren. They arrived in 2 cars like an intervention. I watched them through Hazel's front window. Dad stood on my porch knocking like he still owned the door. Aunt Marlene held a casserole dish. Denise had her phone in her hand, probably ready to text the family group chat about how dramatic I was being. Darren stood slightly behind them, calm and handsome, holding a paper bag from the bakery. Ellie's favorite cinnamon rolls. bait with frosting. Hazel looked at me. You don't have to do this. Yes, I said, I do. Miles stood beside the sink. You want me outside? No, I said, I want you right where you are. Then I opened my front door. Dad pushed in first. Not walked. Pushed. Nora, this has gone far enough. Aunt Marlene followed, already sighing. Honey, your father is worried sick. You can't just run to a neighbor's house and start making accusations. Denise glanced at Miles and raised her eyebrows. Oh, so that's what this is. Darren stepped inside last. His eyes moved around the room. The table, the windows, the hallway, the locked garage door. He noticed details before he noticed people. That was when I knew Miles was right. I had not seen it before because I thought attention meant care. Now I understood. Sometimes attention is inventory. Dad pointed at Miles. You have some nerve showing your face here. Miles did not move. Dad looked at me. Nora, send him out. Number, 1 syllable, small word. Huge door. Dad stared. What did you say? I said no. Hazel sat at the kitchen table and took a calm sip of coffee. Aunt Marlene frowned. This is not like you. No, I said. It is exactly like me. You just never like the version of me that says no. Denise muttered, here we go. I heard it. I let it sit in the room. Then I reached into the drawer beside the stove and placed 4 things on the table. The little black recorder Miles found under my porch bench. A photo of Darren using my backdoor key. A screenshot of my father's Facebook post calling Darren the man who stepped up. And Ellie's drawing from Miss Angela's office. In the drawing there was a small girl in bed, a tall man smiling in the dark, and another man outside the window holding a board across the frame. Aunt Marlene stopped breathing loudly. Denise lowered her phone. Dad looked at the drawing and looked away too quickly. Darren smiled sadly. It was a good smile. Soft. Injured. Practiced. Nora, he said, whatever story they've put in your head, your name is Blake Redding. The smile disappeared. Not slowly. Not dramatically. It simply shut off. Then it came back. Wrong this time. Too thin. I don't know who told you that. The woman in Oregon whose sister lost her house told Miles. The child counselor told me what Ellie said. Hazel saw you watching my house. And my father gave you my key. Dad's face reddened. I did not know he was like that. Aunt Marlene turned to him. Grant. He snapped, stay out of it. I almost laughed. He had brought her here to pressure me. Now he wanted privacy. How much did you owe him? I asked. Dad's jaw clenched. Darren's eyes moved toward the door. Miles saw it and shifted just enough to block the hallway. Dad said nothing. How much? I repeated. Aunt Marlene whispered. Grant, what is she talking about? Dad slammed his hand on the table. I did what I had to do. There it was. The sentence every selfish person eventually reaches when excuses run out. I looked at him. No, you did what helped you. His mouth twisted. You were drowning before I stepped in. Bills late. Crying every time I came over. That child needed stability. Darren had money, connections. He could have helped you. He scared my daughter. She's dramatic, kids say things. The room froze. Aunt Marlene looked at him like he had become someone else in front of her. I stepped closer. Say it again. Dad blinked. Say again that my 6-year-old is dramatic because she was scared of a man you gave a key to. His face hardened. You always make yourself the victim. No, I said. You made me the payment. That landed. I saw it hit him. Darren spoke then, voice low and smooth. This is getting emotional. Maybe we should all calm down. I turned to him. You do not get to use the word emotional in the house where you made my child afraid to sleep. His eyes narrowed. Just enough. There he was. Not Darren. Not the helpful man. Not the patient almost stepfather. Blake Redding. The mask cracked. You lonely women are all the same, he said softly. Give you a little attention and suddenly you think you're queens. Aunt Marlene gasped. Denise whispered, oh my God. Darren laughed once. What, we're being honest now, right? He looked around my kitchen. This place is falling apart. You were drowning. Grant knew it. I knew it. Everybody knew it. I came in and made things easier. You came in because my mother left me something you wanted. He leaned closer. Your mother left you a starter house and a garage full of rags. Don't turn it into a crown. Miles moved. I raised my hand. No, I said without looking back. This is mine. Darren smiled. Is it because from where I'm standing, every man in your life has had to manage you? That sentence should have broken me. A year earlier it might have. Instead, I felt strangely calm. I looked at my father, then at Darren, then at my aunt and cousin who had come here expecting to watch me be corrected. I want everyone to hear me clearly, I said. This house is not valuable because a man can borrow against it. It is not valuable because someone can sell it, refinance it, or use it to pay off debt. It is valuable because my mother worked her whole life so her daughter and granddaughter would have somewhere safe to stand. My voice shook. I let it. Grant did not protect that. He traded it. Dad whispered Nora. No, you do not get to soften your voice now. He flinched. You gave a stranger my key. You helped him replace Miles in my daughter's life. You posted pictures of my child online to make him look like family. You let people praise you for bringing a predator to my table. Aunt Marlene covered her mouth. Darren said, careful. I looked at him. You should have been more careful when you stepped onto my porch today. His smile faded. Outside, a car door closed. Then another. Officer Kemp appeared on the porch with a second officer behind him. Darren looked through the window and saw them. For the first time since I had known him, real fear crossed his face. Not guilt. Fear, Dad whispered. What did you do? I did not look away from Darren. I told the truth. The rest was not cinematic the way people imagine. No screaming chase. No dramatic tackle. Darren tried to talk. He tried to explain. He tried to become charming again. But Officer Kemp had seen enough footage. Hazel had given him copies. Miles had timestamps. Miss Angela had filed her report. And Darren had stepped into my house after I had clearly told him through text not to come near me or Ellie. When the second officer took the bakery bag from his hand, the cinnamon rolls inside were still warm. That detail made me sick. He had brought my daughter's favorite food to a house where he knew she was afraid. When they placed him in handcuffs, Aunt Marlene started crying. Denise deleted something from her phone. Maybe a text. Maybe a post. Maybe the version of the story where I was the unstable daughter and my father was the hero. Dad stood very still. He watched Darren being led down the porch steps. Then he looked at me. For one wild second, I thought he might apologize. Instead, he said, "You've ruined this family." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was exactly the kind of sentence a traitor says when the mirror finally turns toward him. No, I said. I stopped pretending it wasn't already ruined. Aunt Marlene turned on him. Grant, tell me you didn't give that man her key. Dad said nothing. That silence did more than any confession. Denise started crying too, but quietly, like someone ashamed of how quickly she had chosen the wrong side. Dad looked smaller then. Not harmless. Just smaller. A man whose power depended on everyone else staying confused. I walked to the hook by the door. His spare key was not there, of course, but his old garage remote was. I took it down and placed it in his hand. You are not Ellie's grandfather anymore. His head snapped up. You don't mean that. I mean every word. You can't cut me out. I'm your father. No, I said. You are the man my mother warned me about without ever knowing your name. He looked like I had slapped him. Good. Some truth should hurt on impact. He left that day without coffee, without Ellie, without his key, without the family believing his version. And for the first time in my life, he left my house because I told him to. Miles changed every lock before sunset. Not just the front door, the back door, the garage, the windows, the little side door near the laundry room that I had not used in months. Hazel stood in the yard holding a flashlight, even though it was not dark yet, supervising like the queen of a very small country. Ellie sat on the porch steps with Professor Buttons and watched Miles work. After a while, she said, "Daddy?" Miles froze. Then he turned slowly. "Yeah, Bug. Were you outside because of the bad man?" He looked at me. I nodded. He walked over and crouched in front of her. "I was outside because I love you," he said. "And because I should have come to the door sooner." Ellie studied him. Children know when adults are performing. They also know when adults are telling the truth. She reached out and touched his sleeve. "You can come inside now," she said. Miles covered his mouth with one hand. Then he nodded. "Thank you." Healing did not happen quickly. I will not lie about that. There were no soft focus montages where everyone laughed over pancakes and the past dissolved. Ellie had nightmares. She hated closed doors for a while. She asked me every night if I would still be there in the morning. Every night I gave the same answer. "Yes, I am here. You are safe. Nothing that happened was your fault." Sometimes she believed me. Sometimes she needed to hear it 6 times. I said it 6 times. I would have said it's 6,000. Miles did not move back in. That matters. This is not a story where a man makes one heroic gesture and earns back a marriage like a prize. He rented a small apartment 10 minutes away. He came for dinner twice a week. He went to counseling. I went to counseling. Ellie went to Miss Angela. We learned how to be a family again without pretending we had not broken. Some days I hated Miles. Some days I missed him. Some days both things sat beside each other at the table and passed the salt. But slowly he became steady in a way he had not been before. Not dramatic, not grand. Steady. He showed up when he said he would. He answered hard questions without hiding behind shame. He apologized without asking me to comfort him afterward. That more than anything taught me what change looks like. It is not a speech. It is repetition. It is a man doing the school pickup on a rainy Tuesday and remembering the purple umbrella. It is a father sitting outside a child's bedroom door until she falls asleep, not because he wants praise, but because she asked. As for my father, consequences came quietly. Officer Kemp connected Darren to complaints in other counties. My father was questioned. There were charges eventually, but I will not turn this story into a courtroom report because that was never the part that mattered most to me. What mattered was this. For once, the family group chat went silent. No one posted quotes about forgiveness. No one told me to be the bigger person. Aunt Marlene came by one afternoon with a casserole and red eyes. She stood on my porch and said, "I am sorry I believed him before I believed you." I let her apologize. I did not rush to make her feel better. That was new for me. Denise deleted the comments under Dad's old posts. Then she sent me a message that said, "I should have asked if you were okay instead of assuming he was right." I did not answer for 3 days. When I finally did, I wrote, "Next time ask." My father wrote letters, first angry ones, then sad ones, then religious ones, then sickly sweet ones full of childhood memories he had no right to use as tools. I did not answer. Not one. People think silence is weakness because it is quiet. They do not understand how much strength it takes not to open a door just because someone is crying outside it. One letter said, "You only get one father." I wrote my response on a sticky note and put it on the refrigerator. My daughter only gets one childhood. That became my rule. When guilt knocked, I looked at that note. When relatives hinted that time was passing and Dad was getting older, I looked at that note. When I missed the father I thought I had, I looked at that note. My daughter only gets one childhood. There is a kind of peace that comes from being misunderstood by people who benefit from your silence. At first it hurts. Then it becomes freedom. I sold one of my mother's old sewing machines. Not because I needed the money. Because I needed the garage to stop being a shrine to everything I had lost. I kept the better machine. Hazel helped me paint the walls. Miles fixed the window. Ellie chose the color for the door. Yellow, like morning, she said. We turned the garage into a small craft room. On Saturdays, neighborhood kids came over to make messy things with glue and paper and too much glitter. I called it Diane's room. Not because of inheritance papers, not because of property. Because legacy is not what people leave you on a document. Legacy is what you protect when the wrong people try to turn love into leverage. One morning, almost a year after that night at Hazel's window, Ellie slept until 7. No nightmares. No crying. No asking if I would still be there. Just sleep. Peaceful, ordinary sleep. I woke before her and walked into my mother's garage. The yellow door glowed in the early light. I opened the cedar chest for the first time without feeling like grief was sitting on the lid. Inside, beneath folded fabric, I found a small square of yellow cotton pinned to a note in my mother's handwriting. For something beautiful someday. I sat on the floor and cried. Not the way I had cried before. Not helpless. Not broken. I cried because my mother had believed in someday, even when she did not know what mine would look like. That afternoon, I used the yellow fabric to make Ellie a small pillow. My stitches were uneven. Mom would have laughed and fixed them. Ellie loved it anyway. She slept with it beside Professor Buttons that night. Fabric cannot erase fear. A pillow cannot undo betrayal. But love, when protected, can become something beautiful again. One evening, Hazel and I sat on my porch while Ellie chased fireflies in the yard and Miles grilled burgers badly with great confidence. Hazel watched him burn one side of a patty and said, "That man should not be allowed near open flame." I laughed. A real laugh. The kind that starts in the chest and surprises you. Hazel looked at me. "You're different now." "I hope so." "No," she said. "You are." Before you kept asking life for permission to stand up. I watched Ellie run barefoot through the grass. What do I do now? I asked. Hazel leaned back in her chair. Live in the house like it belongs to you. So I did. I changed the curtains. I took down the family photo where my father had his arm around me like ownership. I planted rosemary by the back steps because my mother always said a house with herbs by the door had someone paying attention. I stopped apologizing when I said no. I stopped explaining boundaries to people committed to crossing them. And slowly the house became mine in a way it had not been, even when the deed already said it was. Because dignity is not given to you by family. Sometimes family is the first place that tries to take it. Dignity is what remains when you stop begging people to love you correctly. Respect is not proven by blood, it is proven by behavior. And self-worth is not loud. Sometimes self-worth is a woman changing the locks while her hands shake. Sometimes it is refusing to open one more letter. Sometimes it is telling your child you are safe until both of you believe it. I used to think family meant the people who had known you the longest. Now I think family means the people who do not make you smaller to keep themselves comfortable. Family is Hazel knocking on my door in a bathrobe because she saw danger and refused to mind her business. Family is Miles standing outside in the cold, imperfect and late, but finally willing to protect what he once failed to keep. Family is Aunt Marlene learning that apologies do not erase harm, but they can be a beginning. Family is Ellie sleeping through the night. Family is my mother's yellow garage door glowing in the morning. And legacy is not a house. It is the courage to make that house safe. If this story stayed with you, tell me in the comments, would you forgive a parent who betrayed you like that? Or would you walk away forever? And if you have ever had to choose your peace over someone else's version of family, I hope you know this. Walking away from betrayal is not cruelty. Protecting your child is not disrespect. And refusing to be used is not revenge. Sometimes it is the first honest thing you have ever done for yourself.